let's hop into it here. So I just pulled up our studio review here on the LaunchCode website. We are on Studio 25, Chapter 25.11, Studio HTTP and Forms. So we're going to get right into it here. 25.11.1, the introduction. This chapter taught you that forms submit data in HTTP requests. The Studio uses form and HTTP concepts to build a search engine selector. That is a search form that allows a user to choose which search engine they would like to use. It will look like this. Okay, so it gives us an actual visual of what we need to create tonight. So that is perfect. The search engine selector that we will build. Yes, thank you very much for that little caption there. Most search engines will work the same way. The have, that's a misspelling there. They have a single text input and they submit data using a GET request. Additionally, many of the most popular search engines also use the same name for a search parameter, Q. Yes, Q is short for query, which is how we do a search parameter. So yes, that is absolutely correct. All right. So it says use 2 to 3 different search engines to search for the same term on the results page. Look the URL. Did this search happen via get or post? Okay, we'll take a look at that. You might have to copy and paste the URL into a text editor to find the search parameters. Some search engines add other parameters to their URL, stuff like that. Okay, thank you very much for these notes. If you want to keep reading to them, I'm not going to read all of them for you to save you a little bit of time here. The fact that most of the search engines use the name Q for their search boxes will allow us to easily create a form that is capable of sending a search request to several search engines. The form will send a request to the query parameter Q, the selected engine. Since the request looks like an essentially at this, okay, google.com. All right, cool. Let's get started. 25.11.2, getting started. Go to the Studio repository and fork, keyword fork, it into your GitHub account. All right, so click on that. Brings us to the GitHub account. What I'm going to do is immediately come over here and click fork. That's exactly what it told me to do. It's going to fork it into my own repository, meaning it's going to give me a personalized copy of this repository. Once I'm in my repo, I'm going to come up here, click code, go ahead and copy this link, go back, and now what I'm going to do is open up a terminal. If you're on Windows or any other machine, you can also just open up your Git Bash terminal as well. So what I'm going to do now is make sure that I'm in my LC directory, which is my folder right here on my desktop. That's where I usually put all of my LaunchCode stuff in. To clone, what do? We always type in git clone because no one else is here to talk to me today. I will answer that one myself. There we go, git clone, and then that link. What it's going to do is clone it into my repository. I'm going to go ahead and double check that this actually happened. I come over here and I see that HTTP and Forms Studio is now in my LC folder. Perfect, perfect. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just cd into my HTTP just in case I need to be there, and perfect. All right, so everything is done now in the terminal. Let's go ahead and go over to Visual Studio Code. Go and exit out of this. There we go. That was from our lecture that night. So I'm going to open up a fresh new window there. Perfect. I'm going to press open. And now what I'm going to do is scroll to LC. No, I need desktop, liar. There we go, LC, and now, there we go. I single click my folder, so I want to open up the project, and I click open. There we go. Now my project is open, and it looks like we only have one file in here, which is index.html, and it looks like we have just a very basic HTML to start out with. Fantastic. Let's hop back. So we have now gone to the repository and we cloned it and cd'd into the new directory, just like it asked. Perfect. So 25.11.3, create the form inputs. Let's build out the form index.html. We will need some data for the search engines we want to work with. All right, so here are our search engines. This is all of the information. Looks like it gives us the label, gives us the value, and gives us the search URL. Perfect. Create a text input within the form and set its name attribute to the value Q. All right, I'm going to go ahead and copy what it just told me here to do. do is go back over here, and I'm going to put this in as a comment. Our HTML comments is open bracket, open pointy bracket, exclamation point, dash, dash, and then there we go. All right. I'm going to full screen this so we can get a little bit more room here. Move that over. There we go. So create the text input. I'm actually going to create this text input within the form itself because it's an input. And it also says add the form elements right there, so I should definitely follow that. All right, so let's go ahead and create it. It says we need to do an input. And then, of course, right after I do input, my first attribute should always be type. There we go. And I want it to be text because it's going to be a search box that I can type in any kind of text. Now it says set its name attribute to the value Q. So I'm going to say use the name attribute equal Q. Perfect. There we go. Now it did set an ID, so I'm not going to set an ID just right now, but I will in the future if it needs me to. But it did say set the name Q. So there we go. We save that. Let's hop back and see what else we need to do. Create a radio group with one radio button for each search engine. Recall that the radio buttons with the same name are grouped, so the same value for this attribute is going to be engine on each radio button. All right, so we're going to be creating 4 radio buttons, one for Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, and Ask. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's go back over here, and now what we're going to do is that it said we need to group our radio buttons together. So first I'm going to do a label here, because that's how I'm going to start labeling my radio buttons. So label, I'm going to start with Google. And then in here, I'm going to do input, type, and then we're going to do a radio button, which the type for that is just radio. There we go. And now name, we have to put our actual group for our radio buttons. So in here, it said to put engine. Remember, that's what it said in our directions, engine. So I'm going to put engine here. And then I'm going to put value. It says my value for Google should be Google, but all lowercase. Pay very close attention to that. So it should be Google. There we go. Input. Perfect, just like that. And then I'm going to close my label. All right, let's go and save that. So before I do anything else, I want to make sure my radio button is A-OK. So I'm going to go over to here, double-click HTTP, and double-click index.html. It's going to open up a Safari. I personally don't like Safari just because sometimes it doesn't work properly. So I'm going to come over here. What I did was I copied that URL from Safari. I'm going to paste it in here, press enter, and there we go. Okay, so it looks like our form is being set up properly. So let's keep going. I'm going to copy this, and we have 3 more search engines to do. So I'm going to paste it 3 more times. The next one I believe was DuckDuckGo, but I'll double check here. DuckDuckGo, I'm going to copy the value so I don't have to actually type it out. So DuckDuckGo, and then our value is going to be DuckDuckGo with a lowercase d and then a capital case D. There we go. Okay, so name engine, awesome. What's next? We need to do Bing. Bing it is, Bing with a lowercase b. So Bing goes in there, Bing goes in here, with a lowercase b. And then finally we have Ask. I have not used Ask in a long time. Paste an Ask there, type in Ask. There we go. Save that. Let's go back to our index.html, refresh, and it looks like we are getting our form up and going. Awesome, awesome. So let's go and see how far away we are right now from our form. It looks like we're looking pretty close. We just need to add this go button. Let's go back down and see what else we have to do. Create a label for each element radio button. We did that. Finally, add a submit button to the form and set its value to go. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do that. To add a submit button, we're going to create another input, but this type is going to be of submit. There we go. And its value is what the button's actually going to show. And it said it needed to be set to go with capital G. There we go. Close it off. Save. Perfect. As always, baby steps. So we're going to come back over here, refresh, and now we see that go button. We're getting a lot closer. Let's go and see what happens if I just type in test or something like that. Go. Cool. Look up here in our URL. We see Q equals to test. That's what we want to see. So we are well on our way here. Awesome, awesome. Come back out. I'm actually going to go up here real quick, and I'm going to see how our form is doing. Okay, that is what I was afraid of. It looks like the text is on the left-hand or right-hand side, excuse me, of the radio button. So I'm actually going to switch around our HTML before we continue. It looks like what I'm going to do here is just put it on the other side. There we go. Got to keep everything consistent. And last one. Perfect. Save that, come back over to our index.html, refresh, and it's looking a lot cleaner now and a lot more like what we are supposed to have on our studio. Perfect. Let's go down here. How does the value attribute of submit button used? That is exactly a good question. The value attribute of the submit button, as we kind of talked about in lecture, is going to set the text of the button. The text of the button. So that go there, that is what value sets. Awesome. So, all right, deep breath, deep breath. We're on the 25.11.4 submit event handler. Pop quiz. What happens if you try to submit the form at this point and why? Well, what happens was if we submitted this, it actually sent a GET request. We know it's a GET request because it's doing something with the URL up here. And it says Q equals test. It submits whatever we posted in here. So we'll say test again. We'll click DuckDuckGo, click go, and now we have two parameters up here. Q for query or search text, and our engine, what we wanted to do. Again, we're sending a GET request with these two parameters over there. So that is the answer to that pop question. We're doing it because GET is our default. You're using the method GET, not POST. Which HTTP method would be used for submitting the form? Will be used when submitting the form. Well, right now it's GET. Right now it's GET. We only want to use GET at the current time. Because this is actually, we're going to be using GET throughout this because we need to send this information over to the search engine using a GET request, not a POST request, unless vividly requested by the search engine. I believe they're going to be wanting to use a GET request. How do I know that? Just from practice. If I go to google.com and say cookie, I see that all my stuff up here, I see Q cookie right here and all that fun stuff. Everything over here was sent in a GET request. So that's how I made that assumption, is that I know that my search engines typically want to go for a GET request and put all this stuff in the parameter. That's how I know it's going to be a GET request. Cool, cool. Oops, wrong thing. There we go. All right, let's move on. Now we have a form with inputs that has nowhere to send its data. The action attribute determines where a form submits data, but we can't set the action attribute on the form in our HTML. Our form needs to submit data to a different site based on selected search engine. To make this happen, we need to set the value of the form's action after the user hits the submit button, but before the form request is sent. Okay, that's a lot of words there. Let's go ahead and keep diving into it. Form triggers a submit event at precisely this moment because it's an event. We click that submit button, an event happens. Therefore, we can create an event handler to solve this problem. Our handler will retrieve the selected value from the radio group, use the value to determine the action URL based on the selected search engine, and set the action attribute of the form. All right. That is quite a bit there. So let's go into 25.11.4.1, create and register the handler. Within a script element, or within the script element, near the top of the file, create a function named setSearchEngine. All right. Let's go ahead and create that function because we'll create this function code later, it looks like. Or just now, add the console log or add a console log for it. So let's go back over to our HTML. Here, what we're going to do is create a named function. So we're going to come up here, say function. Didn't say to take in any parameters just yet, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to console log. Hello world. Cool. I don't like how this is formatted. I'm going to put that over one more. I'm going to save that. Cool. All right, replace the to do with code to add search engine as a handler to the form submit event. Okay. So what it's asking is that I need to add an event listener for the submit button. You will first need to get the form element using one of the DOM methods. Very good. Yes, absolutely. So we're going to come in here on the onload. So the first thing before we're able to add an event listener or anything, we need to get the thing we want to add an event listener to. So we say const my submit button element equals document, because that's where all of our stuff is hiding. Get element by ID in here. And I'm going to paste now the ID of the submit button. I don't have an ID down here, so what I can do is actually add an ID here. So ID equals submit. We can also use a query selector as well if we wanted to, but I just like to do the IDs just because I know what I'm getting. So it's just a personal preference. But query selector is also very much um, a good option as well. All right, once we get our submit button, now we're able to add our event listener. So what we do is we paste that name, my submit button element dot add event listener. And we're gonna be listening for a click. That's what we want. And then it says to set it as the handler. Set search engine as the handler. So I'm just paste that in there without the parentheses. There we go. So now every time that my submit button is clicked, this function up here will run. Let's go ahead and make sure that works. Save this, go back to our index.html, and now I want to see the console. So I right click, press inspect, go to console, and now I'm going to just type, or now I'm just going to click go because I don't need to do any of that. There we go. We see it very, very briefly, hello world popping up, but it goes away. That's because, again, as we click go, what it does is it submits a GET request, which is just going to refresh the page. It's going to get us the same exact page over and over. If we ever wanted to not do that, what we do is type in event.prevent default. So we don't have that submit button do its default action. So let's try it again. Now we did that, and now our hello world actually stays. Again, it's because that prevent default that we added there will keep us from actually going to the next page because we're not doing the default action that submit technically does. So it will stop it from doing that. So prevent default in that capacity will do. Awesome, awesome. All right, let's go ahead and see what else we need to do here. So near the bottom of the script element is this stuff here. Place to do. Okay, we just did that. Let's see this note here. The event handler can be added only after the form has been built. So we do that by adding a load event on the window exactly right. So yeah, we cannot add that event listener until the window or the page has been loaded. Otherwise, we don't know if our button is actually like created yet in the document. It takes some time to create those buttons. So we need to give it some time. So we have to wait till everything's loaded to build that event listener. All right, before moving on, make sure the code you just wrote works. That's exactly what we did. We wrote that, we ran it, and we are all good to move on to 25.11.4.2. Set the action. Our event handler now runs when the form is submitted, but it doesn't do anything. We would like to set it to the action on the form based on the user's choice of search engine. All right, let's go ahead and see this. Add code to the set search engine to get the selected radio button element using the document.query selector. The selector you need is a little complicated, so we'll give it to you here. Thank you very much, because I was thinking like, oh, how do you do the checked thing again? There we go. So we're going to use a query selector to get the checked one. Get the check. That's what this colon check means, is that, okay, we're going to look for an input that has the name engine. If you remember, if we go over to our HTML, scroll down to our radio buttons, we have an input, that was the tag name, and then the name engine, and then it says one more thing, colon checked. This is, we're looking for a specific property to be true. We're looking for checked to be true, aka it's been clicked. So that's what this query selector is. So we're going to copy this, bring it over here, and now in search engine, because this is where all of our stuff is happening, we're going to go ahead and get that select button. And I'm going to keep this event.prevent default here just for a little bit until we truly need to remove it. But I believe we'll keep this here for the time being so our page doesn't refresh every time. So I'm going to call this const checked or checked search engine. Search, A-R-C-H. There we go. Equals document.query selector. There we go. And then I'm going to paste in that string there. That's how we're going to query our document to get us that checked input, that engine. Let's go ahead and make sure we got it. So what I'm going to do is console log checked search engine. And save that. Come over here. Here, refresh. And I'm going to go and click on Google and then press go. I see what's returned is exactly that radio button. Perfect. We are getting back the checked box. That is awesome. Let's go and refresh this. What happens if I just press go now? All right, if nothing's checked, it comes back as null. So that's something to just take note of if we ever need that in the future. Cool, cool. All right. Let's move on. This compound CSS selector combines the attribute selector with pseudo selector. Oh, that's a lot of fancy words. The attribute selector, yes, input bracket name equals engine close bracket, matches all the input elements with the attribute name equal to engine. Yeah, we kind of talked about that previously. The pseudo selector colon checked specifies that we only want selected elements from that group of matches. Okay, good. Well, you're validating everything I've said, so thank you very much. Combine the selector gives us the selected element in the radio group. It absolutely does, and we saw that actually working now. Once you have selected the radio button, get its value using dot value to tell us what the value is, which search engine the user has chosen. Okay, all right, we'll do that. We'll go ahead and just add dot value on the end of this here. Let's go ahead and save that. Come back to our index.html and just real quick, making sure that it's truly getting what we need. Good, we're getting back Google now. Awesome. All right, let's keep moving down that studio. At this stage, we could use a large if-else statement if we want to determine the URL's search engine and so on. This is ugly and inefficient. A better approach is to create an object to store the engine values and the URLs as key value pairs for the single engine. So the object would look like this. Okay, well, very fancy. We could definitely do this. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to take in these actions here. Now, I guess we'll just put the actions. Let's see if it has any specific place it would like us to put it. Let's see. This says add to your code. So, at this point, we're just going to put it in here. That's fine. Put it inside of the function. You can also put it outside of the function also if you wanted to. I'm going to put it in here just for safety purposes. There we go. Just because I like it all together. All right, here we go. Now we're going to go ahead and put in these other values. So I'm going to do this. If you over to fast forward here, I'm just going to be copying data. Or you can just stay with me here. There you go. I feel like a robot, just fast forward. Take that search out the wrong way. And last one, ask. Copy that. There we go. Copy that. And paste that. All right, stop fast forwarding. We're back. Cool. We have put all of our actions in there. So this is how we can actually grab things out of there. We can just use these keys, which again, keys, Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, Ask. We notice that we can get that using the dot value from our radio button, which is very cool. If you're wondering where this value comes from, remember, if we come down here, we're getting it from this. It's just an attribute we put in here. No magic involved. You put that data in there, and that's how we're getting it out, using that dot value. Are you asking yourself, if I use .name, will I get engine back? You absolutely will. Let's go ahead and see that. So I want to show you that there is nothing to be afraid of here. Let's go ahead and see this. Refresh that. Go back. And there we go. We get back an engine. So we're using those attributes and calling them as properties. All right. Change that back. We're going to come back down here. Now we're going to go back down. We set the engine. We did that. All right, add this to your code. Now you can use the action URL using the action bracket notation and the value of the selected button. Once you have action URL, find the form element and set its action using the set attribute. If everything went well, your search engine selector page should now work. If not, that's okay. Switch to debugging mode to figure out what needs fixing. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So it says we need a set attribute on our form element. So what we're going to do here is that once we have, well, let's go ahead and get the actual action URL. So I'm going to create a variable called const action URL. And what I'm going to do now is get the URL. So I need to look in the object actions. So I use actions. And I need to get the key out, which is going to be Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, or Ask. We said those specific keys are actually the values of whatever, or the value of whatever the selected search engine radio button is. So there we go. And we'll go and make sure this works. So we'll console log the action URL. Save that, come back over to index, refresh that, click on Google, press go, and we see we get back google.com. All right, we are good. All right, last things last. It says we need to now set the action of the form. So what we have to do first is I'm going to get that ID. The ID is search form. So next thing I'm going to do here is take out that console log, say const form element equals, and then document dot get element by ID, paste in search form because I know my ID for my form is search form. And now it says we need to take that form element and set attribute. The attribute that we need to set, as it says in our directions, was that action attribute. So what I'm going to do is first type in the attribute name, which is action, and then what the action is supposed to be. This is the URL. So I'm going to say the action is going to be the action URL. If you're actually asking what an action is, essentially it is the URL that it should go to after, or to do the GET request. In this case, a GET request by default. So what URL should I go to afterwards? If we don't set an action, it just keeps it at our local host or our same page that we were just on. So it's good to set this here just for this example. All right, and I'm going to take out this prevent default because I actually want it to go to this URL now. I want it to do its actual job when everything is completed here. So I'm going to save that. I go back over here, go to this, refresh, and I'm going to say cookie once again, click on Google, and we're going to see what happens. Awesome. It looks like it typed in Google or typed in cookie here. It brought us to google.com. We are all good. Awesome, awesome. Let's go ahead and try it again. Let's do DuckDuckGo. Search for cookie on DuckDuckGo. Oh, look at this. This one actually went through and actually searched it for us. Google's kind of a little meh sometimes with people, or it doesn't let people search necessarily because Google has a lot of security things. They don't like people just going in there and trying out, searching things on different sites on their site. They actually make you charge. So let's try this one. Bing, cookie. Oh, it looks like we searched cookies. Awesome, awesome. All right, last one. Let's go make sure we search cookies on Ask. Again, haven't been on Ask in so long. Press go. All right, Ask, you're actually working here. There we go. Cookie checker. Well, look at those. Yep, these results are as terrible as, well, as I remember them. There we go. All right, so we are all golden here on our form. We have finished this studio up until the bonus mission. So if this is all you wanted, feel free to hop off, but we are all good here. Additionally, if you wanted to debug at any time, remember we pressed right click and then inspect to get this thing over here. If we want to go to network and see exactly what's going on, if you truly want to debug, we'll say cookie again and click on Google. Watch it on the right hand side. We sent over this query, and this is all of Google interacting over here. This is all the things it's talking to. This is our initial GET request we sent over, though. Request method GET status code 200, which means good. We want a 200. So that is how we do that. All right. That's how we could debug just a little bit. Let's hop down now to 25.11.5 bonus missions. Add validation to your submit handler to make sure that the user has both selected a search engine and entered a non-empty search term. All right, cool. Let's go and do that. So we're going to have that validation. So what we want to do is that we want to make sure that, one, something that's been checked. So we want to make sure that, well, let's go ahead and just find a place here. Before we even do any of this, what we want to do is find a place where validation should happen and where if it does pass, everything else that should happen. That was kind of weird to explain that. What I'm looking for is a place to place my validation, meaning that I need all of my information above, because we're going sequentially, that I need to validate. And if it passed validation, all of the important actions to be below. That's where we place validation. So all the important stuff that I want to do after everything's validated is down here, which is getting the action URL, getting the form element, setting that attribute, and then doing the thing. But my information that I need for validation is up here. I need those actions. I need the selected search engine. I also need the search term. So I'm going to get the input element, input text element. Let's make it a little bit more specific there. Equals document dot get element by ID. I'm going to come down here and we're going to get this ID here. I know we'll get it by the name. We'll do a query selector example. Query selector, and what we want to do is get the input where the name is equal to, what was that name again? Q. It's equal to Q. There we go. So that should get us our text input. So now we need to do validation here. Again, it's where all of my information that I need to validate is above and all the important actions are below. And we'll see why we have to do that specifically here in a second. So this is where I do validation, and most likely with validation, what you're going to be doing is if statements. Is something actually valid? So the first thing I want to check is my input text element, the thing that actually has all the text, actually have something in it? So I'm going to need to do input text element, and I need to get the value out of it, the text that's in the text box. So of course I use that value attribute or that value property. All right, so I need to see if value is actually not or equal, or if it is equal to something, equal to nothing like that, then I know this is not valid. So if the input.value equals nothing, it's not valid. So I need to go into this if statement and do something, aka yell at them. And I need to check one more thing too. I need to make sure that checked search engine actually has something. Again, before, if you remember, during this, if nothing is checked, search engine actually returns null. So I'm going to say if we don't have a value in our text element or checked search engine equals null, which means nothing is checked, then it's not valid. If we don't have one or the other, we don't have a valid search form. So what we need to do here is we need to do alert saying you need to provide search text and a search engine. There we go. There, so we alerted them saying that you need to do both of these things. And then after that, what we need to do is do an event.prevent default because we don't want to run an action and then we want to return because we want to get the heck out of here. We don't want to do any of the important stuff below. So what we're going to do there is return right after we're done executing this if statement to get out of there and make sure all of this important stuff, if that was valid, never gets touched. Let's save that. Let's go back over here and try it. Go back. There we go. Refresh. What are you doing? Cool. All right. Let's go and press go now. This page says you need to provide search text and search engine. All right. Well, let's go ahead and try this then. Let's go and put test. Let's see what it's now. Oh no, you need to provide search text and a search engine. All right. Well, it caught me on both things. Now I'm going to say on DuckDuckGo, press go, and now it actually works. Again, it's because if we come over here, it's seeing if we have a value. If we don't have a value in our text box, or we don't have anything selected, that's when this gets executed. A conditional. So that's what's happening. Awesome. So it looks like everything here now is working a little bit better. Awesome. Let's keep moving on. Add some CSS rules to your page to make it look nice. Oh, we get to get creative. Fun. All right, let's go and do that. We're going to have to pop this guy open now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new file. I'm going to do styles.css. Cool. What I'm going to do now is hook up our styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say style, and then what do I do? I always forget this one. Let me go ahead and search it. I'll actually search it on this one so you see what I'm doing. Connect style sheet to HTML. I always forget the exact link. Oh, it's link. I always forget that. Rel. There we go. I'm just going to copy this. There we go. Perfect. Style sheets, styles. It's styles. Make sure everything is spelled correct. Perfect. And I don't like that when it's not there. Let's save that. All right, let's go and make sure that this is actually working. So what I'm going to do is just put in the body tag. I'm going to say is, all right, background color, which is not going to look pretty at all. I'm going to say blue. Give me a very 1990s blue, please. Where are you at? There you go. Refresh this. Okay, we are hooked up. All right. Perfect. So there we go. We are all good there. So now what we're going to do is just finalize this by just kind of, there you go. Let's see what we can do something creative here. So let's go and see what we're working with. We're working with a form, some labels. So what I'm going to do, you know what? I'm going to just edit my label first. So I'm going to go ahead and make a tag here that says label. I'm going to say I'm going to increase my font size because I can't read that thing. Size. I'm going to say I want you to be 18 pixels. Save that and see what happens. Come back over here. Got a little bit bigger. That's nice. That's nice. All right. So we have our font size. Maybe we want to now, let's see, what can we do here? What can we do? I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and just do a border around our form. That sounds nice. So I'm going to say form here. Or, you know what, better yet, we could just say form to attack this one directly, but you know what, I'm going to be very specific here. I'm going to go back, I'm going to do a ID of search form only. There we go, what's their complaint? I'm not going to make it empty. I'm going to put something there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase, or I'm going to first put a border here. Let's do a border, and then we're going to do a border width of 2 pixels. Do a border color. We're going to do a nice gray, beautiful gray. And let's go ahead and first see what that does. Do a refresh here. Oh no. Oh, and I forgot one more thing. We need to do a border dash style. These 3 things need to be here in order for a border to show up. There we go. Refresh that. Now we have a nice border. Look at that. But look at this. It's kind of like very, very crushing all of our stuff. That does not look nice. So I want to give my buttons and my radio buttons and my text box a little bit of space inside the box. To do that, we use a thing called padding. That's how we give some spacing in there. So we're going to do a padding of 10 pixels. Let's go and see how that looks now. Oh, that's so much better. Look at that. But you know what? I don't like how close it is to the top. So I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little bit of a spacing between the top and everything. So what that's called outside of this box, outside this little border here, it's called a margin. I'm going to do margin top specifically. You can also do the sides and the bottom, but I'm going to do just the top. I'm going to say 50 pixels there. Save that. Ooh, there we go. Look at that. That's very nice. Now it's kind of a little bit further down. It's not just stuck up at the top. And then finally, I don't like how jagged these little corners look. So I'm going to do one last thing here on my borders. I'm going to say border dash radius. I'm going to give it a nice 3 pixel turn. Let's see how that looks. Ooh, look at that. It's a lot smoother. I know that's very, very small. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice 10 pixels so we can maybe see that a little bit better on my screen. There we go. Now it's very, very curvy. Look at that. We're looking fancy now. And then if I just wanted, maybe, let's see. We'll finish that up with the labels. Perfect. And then I think we're good there. Let's go ahead and do some padding maybe around our labels too. Let's do a 5 pixels and see what that does. This is fun just to go in here and just try out your other stuff. There we go. Now things are a little bit more spaced out too. So go ahead and try to give yourself some fun time here because you worked through this whole studio. Fun with styles.css. Look up all those CSS properties. If you want to go to that, go here to W3 Schools and look up CSS properties. Or you can just Google CSS properties. It'll bring you probably right there. Yeah, W3 School, CSS reference, and it'll tell you everything you can do in CSS, which is a ton of stuff. So go ahead and bring out your creative side. You deserve it. But other than that, friends, we are all done with this studio. So awesome job making it to the end. Hopefully this video did help out. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me. Have a great one. Thanks.